I am Kayla Strathmore, 34 years old and CEO of Horizon Innovations. My entire life, I was the black sheep of the prestigious Strathmore family. During our annual Christmas dinner, my father glanced at my laptop with disdain. Still working from home, he mocked loudly enough for everyone to hear. I nodded silently as my phone buzzed with a notification. The message read, "Acquisition of Strathmore Dynamics complete. You now own 100% of your family company." Before I continue, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments and hit subscribe to join me on this journey. Growing up as a Strathmore in Boston meant living under the weight of generations of expectations. Our family estate in Beacon Hill stood as a monument to old money and even older traditions. Every inch of our 5-story brownstone whispered stories of success, ambition, and ruthless determination. Family portraits lined the mahogany staircase, stern faces of Strathmore patriarchs judging silently as I ran up and down as a child. Strathmore Dynamics was founded by my grandfather Theodore in 1954. He started with a small manufacturing plant producing industrial components, and through shrewd business moves and perfect timing during the post-war industrial boom, built it into a manufacturing empire. The company motto engraved on plaques throughout our home read, "Excellence through tradition." Those 3 words guided every decision in our household. My father, Richard Strathmore, took over the company when I was just 5 years old. Under his leadership, Strathmore Dynamics became even more profitable. But at costs I would only understand years later. Father expanded into international markets, acquired struggling competitors, and slashed workforces with ruthless efficiency. At dinner parties, business associates would praise his decisive leadership. Behind closed doors, employees called him the executioner. Mother Eleanor Strathmore came from another wealthy family and understood her role perfectly. She maintained our social calendar, sat on charity boards, and hosted impeccable dinner parties where business deals were discussed over perfectly cooked steaks. She collected designer clothes like trophies and measured her worth by the exclusivity of her social circle. Her constant refrain to me was, "Appearances matter more than comfort, Kayla." My older brother James was 8 years older than me and groomed from birth to inherit the company. Every achievement was celebrated with extravagant gifts. His first successful school presentation earned him a sailing trip. His college acceptance to Harvard Business School prompted father to buy him a BMW. James absorbed our father's lessons, eagerly mimicking his mannerisms and adopting his cutthroat approach to both business and personal relationships. My younger sister Audrey, only 2 years behind me, became the perfect Strathmore daughter. She was beautiful, polite, and excelled in the social graces our mother valued. She played piano beautifully, spoke 3 languages, and knew exactly which fork to use at formal dinners. She eventually married the son of one of father's business partners, cementing a valuable alliance that extended the Strathmore influence. Then there was me, always asking the wrong questions at the wrong times. While James studied finance and Audrey practiced her French, I dismantled computers and rebuilt them. I questioned why our family company still used paper filing systems when digital solutions were clearly more efficient. I suggested solar panels for our home during a dinner with oil industry executives, earning a sharp kick under the table from father. "Kayla has always been different," mother would say with a tight smile when I failed to impress her friends. Different wasn't a compliment in our household. Despite the material privilege of my childhood, emotional warmth was scarce. Success was expected, not celebrated, and failure was met with cold disappointment. During my 12th birthday dinner, I remember father taking a business call and missing the moment I blew out my candles. Mother was too busy instructing the staff on proper cake serving etiquette to notice my tears. The first time I heard the word disappointing applied to me was when I was 13. I had created a computerized inventory system for father's home office, spending weeks coding it myself. Instead of praise, he frowned at the screen and said, "Computers are tools, Kayla, not careers. This is disappointing. You should focus on subjects that will help you secure a respectable husband." That same year, James returned from his first summer internship at Strathmore Dynamics. Father hosted a lavish dinner in his honor, inviting business associates and family friends. "This is what a Strathmore looks like," father announced, his hand on James's shoulder. someone who understands tradition and responsibility. I sat silently at that dinner watching the approval shower over my brother while I remained in the shadows. That night, I made my first serious entry in a journal that would eventually become my business plan notebook. There must be more than one way to build something valuable. By the time I reached high school, the pattern was set. James was the heir, Audrey was the perfect daughter, and I was the problem child with strange ideas and inappropriate interests. The wealth that surrounded us never quite filled the emptiness I felt when Father would walk past my science fair projects without a glance. Or when Mother would sigh dramatically when I suggested wearing pants instead of dresses to family functions. "You could be so much more if you would just try to fit in," Mother told me once while forcing me into an uncomfortable dress for a gala. I remember looking in the mirror, seeing myself in clothes that felt like a costume, and thinking that perhaps she was right about one thing. I could be so much more, but not by fitting into their mold. Bradford Academy was where Boston elites sent their children to be molded into future leaders. The campus resembled a small college with its brick buildings and manicured lawns. Students wore pressed uniforms and carried leather bags monogrammed with family crests. From day one, I felt like an imposter despite the Strathmore name that preceded me. James had been student body president and valedictorian. Audrey was head cheerleader and won every French competition. I found my place in the computer lab, much to my parents' dismay. While other girls joined Etiquette Club and Future Homemakers of America, I started a coding club with 3 other social misfits. Mr. Peterson, our technology teacher, became my first real mentor. He recognized my talent for programming and encouraged me to pursue it. "You have a gift, Kayla," he told me after I debugged the school administration system during lunch one day. "Not many people can see problems and solutions the way you do." When it came time for college applications, the path was clear for a Strathmore. Harvard was the only acceptable choice. 5 generations of Strathmores had attended, and our family name adorned a small building on campus. Father had already made calls to ensure my application would receive special attention. But during a college fair, I picked up a brochure for Stanford University. Their computer science and business innovation programs were leading the digital revolution. Silicon Valley companies recruited directly from their campus. This was where the future was being built, not in the hallowed halls where my ancestors had studied classical economics and traditional business models. The night I told my parents I was applying to Stanford instead of Harvard was the first major fracture in our relationship. We sat in Father's study, a room designed to intimidate with its dark wood paneling and looming bookshelves. "Stanford is not a Strathmore school," Father said, not even looking up from his papers. "Their computer science program is the best in the country," I countered. "Computer science," he repeated with thinly veiled disgust. "Strathmores run businesses, we don't fix machines." "The future of business is digital," I argued. "I want to create technologies that change how companies operate." Father finally looked up, his expression cold. "If you insist on this foolishness, you can do it without the full Strathmore support. We will provide basic tuition but nothing more. No housing allowance, no spending money, no connections." Mother gasped. "Richard, surely that's too harsh." "She needs to learn that actions have consequences," he replied. "Harvard is where she belongs." That night, I made my decision. I applied to Stanford and was accepted with a partial merit scholarship. The financial punishment my father imposed meant I would need student loans and part-time jobs to make ends meet. But the freedom to pursue my own path was worth it. My college years at Stanford opened my eyes to possibilities I had never imagined growing up in the Strathmore bubble. I double majored in computer science and business innovation, often sleeping only 4 hours a night to keep up with coursework and my campus jobs. I worked at the university library, did freelance web design, and tutored wealthy Silicon Valley kids in computer programming to make rent. Professor Diana Wright became my most important mentor during these years. In her Disruption and Innovation seminar, she recognized my potential beyond my technical skills. "You understand both the human and technological sides of business," she told me. After reading my paper on digital transformation in traditional industries, "That's rare and valuable." When summer internship season arrived after sophomore year, another battle with my family erupted. Father had arranged a position for me at Strathmore Dynamics, assuming I would fall in line despite our differences. Instead, I accepted an unpaid internship at TechFuture, a struggling startup working on supply chain management software. Unpaid mother said when I told her, genuinely confused, "Why would anyone work without compensation?" "Because I'll learn more there in 3 months than I would in 3 years at Strathmore," I replied. Father's response came via email. "Your summer allowance has been canceled. Perhaps this will teach you the value of proper compensation." That summer changed everything. Living on ramen noodles and sleeping on a friend's couch, I thrived in the chaotic startup environment. By August, I had helped redesign their core product, increasing efficiency by 30%. The CEO offered me a paid position for the following summer with stock options, something Father dismissed as monopoly money when I tried to explain its potential value. My graduation from Stanford was a subdued affair compared to the celebrations held for James and Audrey. My parents arrived late, missing my department awards ceremony, where I received recognition for my senior project on sustainable supply chain optimization. They attended the main graduation ceremony, but left immediately after, citing an important dinner engagement back in Boston. At a strained family dinner that evening at an overpriced Boston restaurant, Father raised his glass in a half-hearted toast to Kayla, who has completed her education and will hopefully now focus on serious matters. "Actually," I said, heart-pounding but voice steady, "I've accepted a position with Innotech Solutions in San Francisco. They're doing groundbreaking work in business process automation." Father set down his glass without drinking. "Playing with computers," he said dismissively. "When you're ready to contribute to something meaningful, Strathmore Dynamics will have an entry-level position waiting." I looked around the table at my family. James smirked, clearly enjoying my fall from grace. Audrey studied her plate, avoiding conflict as always. Mother sipped her wine, expression carefully neutral. And Father, the man whose approval I had sought for so long, had already moved on to discussing a recent acquisition with James. In that moment, I realized a fundamental truth that would guide my next steps. I would never earn their respect by following their rules. The only path forward was to create my own. Innotech Solutions occupied 3 floors of a gleaming glass tower in downtown San Francisco. On my first day, I was assigned to a team developing workflow automation for manufacturing clients. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was essentially building tools that would have helped Strathmore Dynamics if Father hadn't been so resistant to technological change. Within 6 months, I had distinguished myself by streamlining our development process and bringing in 2 new clients through improvements I suggested during sales meetings. My team leader, Benjamin Walsh, took notice and began involving me in higher-level strategic discussions. "You have good instincts for both the technical and business sides," he told me. "That's unusual and valuable." While analyzing client needs patterns, I identified a significant gap in the market. Traditional manufacturing companies were struggling to adapt to increasing demands for sustainability and transparency in their supply chains. The software solutions available were either too complex for easy adoption or too simplistic to provide real value. During nights and weekends, I began developing a business plan for what would eventually become Horizon Innovations. My vision was clear: create intuitive, powerful software that would help traditional industries transition to more sustainable and efficient practices without disrupting their core operations. After 18 months at Innotech, I had saved enough for a few months of living expenses and refined my business plan to the point where I was ready to seek initial funding. Despite our strained relationship, approaching my family seemed like the logical first step. The Strathmore name carried weight with investors, and family money came with fewer strings than venture capital. I scheduled a meeting with the Strathmore Family Investment Board, which consisted of Father James and 2 longtime family financial advisors. Mother attended as an observer, sitting silently in a corner of our family home's imposing conference room. My presentation was meticulously prepared. I had market research, competitive analysis, financial projections, and a working prototype of my core software module. For 45 minutes, I outlined my vision for Horizon Innovations and requested a $500,000 initial investment in exchange for 15% equity. The silence that followed my presentation felt eternal. Finally, Father leaned forward, folded his hands on the polished table, and delivered the response that would fuel my determination for years to come. "Kayla," he said with exaggerated patience, "this is precisely why we wanted you at Harvard. You have no understanding of real business. This software plaything might make a nice hobby, but it will never be a serious enterprise. Strathmore Capital is for serious investments, not technological fantasies." James chuckled, adding his own barb. "The market size you've projected is delusional. Traditional manufacturers don't want fancy software from inexperienced developers. They want reliability and tradition, something you've always failed to appreciate." One of the financial advisors, an older gentleman who had known me since childhood, at least attempted kindness in his rejection. "Perhaps with a few more years of industry experience, you could revisit this idea. For now, it seems premature." As I packed up my presentation materials, hands shaking with a mixture of rage and humiliation, Father delivered the crushing blow that would echo in my mind during my darkest moments and greatest triumphs. "You'll never build anything worthwhile, Kayla. You lack the discipline and understanding of what truly matters in business. Some people are builders and some are dreamers. Unfortunately, you're the latter." I left that meeting without another word, but with absolute clarity about two things. I would never again seek their approval, and I would prove them wrong no matter what it took. 2 weeks later, I met Mason Carter at a tech networking event in San Francisco. A successful angel investor with a background in sustainable business practices, he listened to my elevator pitch with genuine interest rather than dismissive skepticism. "You're addressing a real pain point," he said after I explained my concept. "Most sustainability solutions ignore the practical realities of traditional manufacturing. Send me your deck, and we'll talk next week." Mason became my first investor, offering $300,000 for 20% equity terms, less favorable than I had hoped, but enough to get started. More importantly, he connected me with other angel investors who contributed smaller amounts, bringing my initial funding round to $450,000. I submitted my resignation to Innotech the next day. My team leader tried to convince me to stay, offering a promotion and raising concerns about the risks of entrepreneurship. 90% of startups fail, he reminded me. "You're giving up a promising career here." "I'm not afraid of failure," I told him, thinking of my father's words. "I'm afraid of never trying to build something that matters." Horizon Innovations began in my small San Francisco apartment. I converted my living room into an office, worked 18-hour days, and lived on coffee and determination. My first hire was Lucas Martinez, a brilliant developer I had worked with at Innotech, who believed in my vision enough to take a significant pay cut. Soon after, I brought on Zoe Williams, a marketing specialist with experience in manufacturing sectors. Together, we built the foundation of what would become Horizon Chain, our flagship product, designed to help traditional manufacturers transition to more sustainable and transparent supply chain practices without disrupting their existing operations. Those early days were exhausting but exhilarating. For the first time in my life, I was building something that aligned perfectly with my values and vision, without having to justify or explain myself to people who had already decided I would fail. The first 2 years of Horizon Innovations tested every ounce of my resolve. We faced technical challenges, market resistance, and the constant pressure of our dwindling bank account. 3 times we came within weeks of being unable to make payroll. Twice, I forwent my own salary to keep our small team afloat. The studio apartment I downgraded to felt worlds away from the Strathmore mansion, but I never once regretted my decision. Lucas and Zoe stayed loyal through it all, working long hours for modest pay and equity promises that might never materialize. We added 2 more team members, Taylor Nichols, a former finance executive who believed in sustainable business practices, and Raj Patel, a brilliant user experience designer who made our complex software accessible to manufacturing floor managers. Our breakthrough came 22 months after founding, when we finalized the first version of Horizon Chain. The software could map entire supply chains, identify inefficiency and waste points, and suggest practical improvements that reduced environmental impact while increasing profitability. Most importantly, it integrated with existing systems, rather than requiring complete overhauls. After dozens of rejections, we landed our first major client, Green Future Enterprises, a mid-sized furniture manufacturer looking to improve their sustainability metrics without sacrificing efficiency. Their CEO, Samantha Rivera, took a chance on us when larger competitors offered safer but less innovative solutions. What sold me, she told me after signing the contract, was that you understood both the idealistic goal of sustainability and the practical realities of manufacturing. Most tech companies only understand the former. That first successful implementation changed everything. Green Future reported a 17% reduction in waste and a 12% increase in supply chain efficiency within the first quarter of using our system. They became our most vocal advocates, leading to 3 new clients within months. As word of our success spread through industry networks, Horizon Innovations began to gain recognition. Sustainable Business Quarterly featured us in their Innovators to Watch section. The Technology for Good conference invited me to speak on a panel about digital transformation in traditional industries. During this period of growing success, my family continued to dismiss my achievements. At a rare family gathering for Thanksgiving, I mentioned our recent feature in Industry Technology Review. "Those tech magazines will write about anything new and shiny," James said dismissively. "Call us when you make the Wall Street Journal." Father nodded in agreement. Kayla has always been good at attracting attention. Sustaining success is the true challenge. What they didn't know or chose to ignore was that Strathmore Dynamics was beginning to struggle. Their refusal to adapt to changing market demands for transparency and sustainability was costing them clients. James, now Chief Operating Officer under Father, continued to rely on the Strathmore name and tradition rather than innovation to maintain their market position. After dinner, Mother pulled me aside in the kitchen, her voice low. "Your father would never admit it, but the company has had some setbacks recently. Nothing serious," she added quickly, "but perhaps some of your computer knowledge might be helpful." I was stunned by this near admission that my skills might have value, but it was too little too late. "Strathmore Dynamics has made it clear they're not interested in my input," I replied. "I'm focused on building Horizon now." By our 3rd year, Horizon Innovations had grown to 15 employees and moved into proper office space in San Francisco's Soma district. Our client list included 20 manufacturing companies ranging from small regional operations to mid-sized national brands. Horizon Chain was on version 3.0, with expanded capabilities and improved integration features. The turning point in our growth trajectory came when Adaptive Capital, a venture firm focused on sustainable technologies, approached us about Series A funding. After extensive due diligence and negotiation, we secured $10 million in exchange for 22% equity, valuing Horizon Innovations at over $45 million. The investment allowed us to expand our team, enhance our technology, and increase our marketing efforts. We recruited top talent from competitors, including several developers from legacy software companies who were frustrated by their employers' resistance to innovation. During this growth phase, I maintained a simple personal life despite our increasing success. I moved to a modest 1-bedroom apartment closer to our office, but avoided the trappings of startup founder excess that I saw among my peers. Every dollar we earned went back into building the company, improving our product, or taking care of our team. My personal sacrifice paid off in team loyalty. When larger companies attempted to poach our best talent with significant salary increases, most chose to stay. "Working here matters," Lucas told me after turning down an offer that would have doubled his compensation. "We're actually helping companies become better, not just more profitable." As we approached our 4th year, Horizon Innovations had become a recognized name in sustainable business technology. Our client base had grown to over 50 companies across North America, and we were beginning to explore international expansion. Horizon Chain was being taught as a case study in business schools, including Harvard, a fact I took particular satisfaction in. The contrast between my professional success and family recognition remained stark. Christmas cards from the Strathmores were formal and impersonal. Birthday calls, when they came at all, were brief and perfunctory. Only Audrey made genuine efforts to stay connected, occasionally visiting me in San Francisco and showing real interest in what I was building. "Father and James still talk about you like you're playing at business," she confided during one visit. "But I looked up Horizon online." "What you're doing is impressive, Kayla." Her validation meant more than she knew, but I had long since stopped measuring my worth by Strathmore standards. The companies using our software to reduce waste, improve efficiency, and operate more sustainably were all the validation I needed. What I didn't realize was that our paths were about to collide in ways none of us could have anticipated. And the Strathmore empire was much more vulnerable than anyone knew. Horizon Innovation's 5th year began with unprecedented momentum. Our revenue had quadrupled from the previous year. Our team had grown to 65 employees across development sales, customer success, and operations. Industry publications regularly featured our case studies, and I had been named to the prestigious 40 Under 40 list in Business Innovation magazine. Then came the market disruption that would change everything. New international regulations on manufacturing transparency and environmental impact sent shockwaves through traditional industries. Companies suddenly needed to document their entire supply chain and prove compliance with sustainability standards or face significant penalties and public relations damage. For Horizon, this regulatory shift created explosive demand for our solutions. Our sales team could barely keep up with incoming requests. We implemented an accelerated onboarding program to train new staff quickly and expanded our server capacity to handle the increased data processing needs. In the midst of this controlled chaos, I received a call from a number I almost didn't recognize. It had been over 2 years since I had spoken directly with my father. "Kayla," he said without preamble when I answered, "this new regulatory nonsense is clearly your doing." I was momentarily speechless. "Excuse me. These sustainability requirements. Your tech friends in California must have lobbied for them. It's a direct attack on traditional manufacturing." The accusation was so absurd I almost laughed. Father, international regulations aren't created by startup founders. They reflect changing market demands and environmental necessities. Strathmore Dynamics has operated successfully for decades without interference from environmental extremists, he continued as if I hadn't spoken. Now we're expected to document every supplier and material source. It's preposterous. What struck me most wasn't his anger, but the underlying anxiety in his voice. Richard Strathmore, always in complete control, sounded worried. "The regulations aren't going away," I said carefully. "Most manufacturers are adapting." "Easy for you to say with your software toys," he snapped. "Real industries with physical products and global supply chains can't simply install a program and comply overnight." After ending the call, I sat motionless in my office, processing the interaction. Father had never called me for business reasons before. The fact that he had reached out even antagonistically suggested Strathmore Dynamics might be struggling more than I realized. That evening, I asked our research team to compile a comprehensive report on Strathmore Dynamics' current market position, sustainability practices, and public reputation. What they delivered 3 days later shocked me to my core. The report revealed that Strathmore Dynamics had been cutting corners on environmental compliance for years. They had outsourced manufacturing to facilities with documented labor violations. Their primary factory in Michigan had received multiple EPA warnings for waste disposal practices. Most concerning, they had actively lobbied against transparency regulations and contributed to political campaigns opposing environmental protections. Beyond the ethical issues, the company was in financial trouble. Their stock had declined 30% over the past year. 3 major clients had publicly terminated contracts, citing sustainability concerns. Industry analysts predicted further losses as the new regulations took full effect. This information presented me with a profound ethical dilemma. Despite years of rejection and dismissal, the Strathmores were still my family. Strathmore Dynamics employed thousands of people who depended on the company for their livelihoods. Did I have some responsibility to help, even after being told repeatedly that my business approach had no value? I called an emergency meeting with my executive team, now consisting of Lucas as Chief Technology Officer, Zoe as Chief Marketing Officer, Taylor as Chief Financial Officer, and Raj as Chief Product Officer. For hours, we discussed the situation from every angle. We could approach them with a partnership offer, Lucas suggested. Help them comply with the new regulations using our systems. Taylor shook her head. Based on this financial data, they might not survive long enough for implementation. Their cash reserves are dwindling and they have significant debt coming due next quarter. What about acquisition? Raj asked quietly, voicing the thought I had been avoiding. We have the capital since our Series B funding. Their manufacturing expertise combined with our technology could create something truly revolutionary. The room fell silent as everyone looked at me. The personal implications of such a move were enormous. Acquiring my family's company after being rejected by them repeatedly would be seen as either poetic justice or ruthless revenge depending on one's perspective. Let me be clear, I finally said. Any business decision we make has to serve Horizon's mission and values. This isn't about personal vindication. Zoe, always perceptive about underlying motivations, gave me a knowing look. Maybe not entirely, but that doesn't mean it's the wrong move strategically. We spent the next week analyzing the potential acquisition from every angle. Strathmore Dynamics had valuable patents, manufacturing facilities, and client relationships that could accelerate Horizon's growth. Their weakness in sustainability and technology was precisely our strength. From a pure business perspective, the acquisition made sense if the price was right. During our final strategic meeting on the matter, Taylor revealed the piece of information that removed any remaining doubt about our course of action. I've been digging deeper into their financials, she said, sliding a folder across the conference table. They've been falsifying compliance reports to major clients. When this becomes public, and it will, they'll face lawsuits and possibly criminal charges. The room grew silent as I reviewed the evidence. My father and brother had crossed the line from resistance to regulation into outright fraud. They were not only damaging the environment, but actively deceiving their clients and the public. We moved forward with the acquisition strategy, I decided. Not just for business reasons, but because we can transform their operations into something ethical and sustainable. That's always been our mission. The next phase required absolute secrecy. We approached several members of Strathmore's board, who were increasingly concerned about the company's direction. We presented evidence of the compliance fraud and offered a solution, a private acquisition that would preserve jobs and transform the company before public scandal could destroy it completely. 2 key board members agreed to support our bid, giving us a critical foothold. Meanwhile, we secured additional funding from Adaptive Capital and other investors specifically for the acquisition attempt. As we finalized our strategy, I received a surprising call from my sister Audrey. James knows something is happening, she said without preamble. He's been having emergency meetings and looks worried all the time. Father is drinking more than usual. How do you know this? I asked, surprised by her insight. I pay attention, she replied simply. And unlike them, I actually read industry news. I've seen what Horizon is doing. Are you planning something involving Strathmore? I hesitated, unwilling to put her in a difficult position. You don't have to tell me, she continued. But whatever it is, be careful. They won't take it well. A week later, I received an unexpected invitation to dinner at the family home. Mother's message indicated it would be just family to reconnect after too much time apart. The timing seemed too coincidental to be genuine, but it presented an opportunity I couldn't ignore. The Strathmore family home looked exactly as I remembered it. The imposing facade, perfectly manicured gardens, and ornate front door, designed to intimidate visitors. As I approached, I felt a familiar tightening in my chest, the physical manifestation of years of judgment and disapproval. Mother greeted me with her standard air kiss, careful not to smudge her makeup. Kayla, darling, it's been too long. You look professional. From her tone, professional clearly wasn't the compliment it might have been from anyone else. In Strathmore language, it meant I wasn't living up to the family's standards of feminine presentation. Father and James waited in the formal living room, whiskey glasses in hand. Neither stood when I entered. Audrey, seated on the far couch, gave me a subtle nod of acknowledgement. So the prodigal daughter returns. Father said, his attempt at humor falling flat. Your mother insisted we should reconnect as a family. Dinner was served in the formal dining room, where generations of Strathmores had conducted business over perfectly cooked meals. The conversation remained superficial through the first course, touching on safe topics like Boston weather and Mother's latest charity function. As the main course arrived, Father finally addressed me directly. I understand your little software company has found some success, he said, cutting into his steak with precision. though I imagine these new regulations have been quite beneficial for you. Horizon was growing steadily before the regulations, I replied evenly. But yes, more companies are recognizing the importance of sustainable practices now. James snorted. Sustainable practices. Just another term for increased costs and bureaucratic interference. Actually, I countered our clients typically see cost reductions of 15 to 20% after implementation. Sustainability and profitability aren't mutually exclusive. Father waved his hand dismissively. Perhaps for small operations that can adapt quickly. Established industry leaders have more complex considerations. Like compliance with environmental laws, I asked innocently. A flash of something alarm perhaps crossed James's face before he controlled his expression. Father changed the subject abruptly. I notice you're still working remotely. Pulled out your laptop during family dinner last time you were here. Still running your hobby business from coffee shops. The dismissive tone was so familiar it almost made me smile. His perception of Horizon was so disconnected from reality. Our headquarters now occupied 3 floors of a downtown San Francisco building. We had additional offices in Chicago and Austin. But in his mind, I was still playing at business. Actually, I replied calmly. I was confirming some details about an acquisition we're completing. Acquisition, Mother asked, showing genuine interest for the first time. Your company is being acquired? No, I said, making eye contact with my father. Horizon is the acquirer. Father chuckled. And what exactly is your company acquiring? A mobile app? Another software startup? My phone buzzed in my pocket. I checked it discreetly under the table. The message from Taylor read exactly what I had been waiting for. Board vote complete. Acquisition approved. You now own 100% of Strathmore Dynamics. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. Actually, I said, setting my phone on the table, we just acquired Strathmore Dynamics. The silence that followed was absolute. Mother's fork clattered against her plate. Audrey's eyes widened. James froze mid-motion wine glass halfway to his lips. Father recovered first, his laugh forced and hollow. That's absurd. The board would never approve such a thing. The board voted 20 minutes ago, I replied. 3 members were particularly concerned about the falsified compliance reports and pending EPA violations. They felt new leadership was needed immediately. James slammed his glass down, red wine sloshing onto the white tablecloth. This is impossible. You can't just walk in and take a company that's been in our family for 3 generations. I didn't take it, James. I purchased it legally and ethically, something the current management hasn't been particularly concerned with lately. Father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. Whatever game you're playing, it won't work. I'll fight this with every resource at my disposal. You're welcome to try, I said calmly. But given the evidence of fraud we've uncovered, I suggest you focus on potential legal defenses instead. Mother looked bewildered, glancing between Father and me. I don't understand. How could this happen without us knowing? The same way the compliance fraud happened without the board knowing, I explained. Lack of transparency, something Horizon specializes in fixing. Father stood abruptly, knocking his chair backward. Get out of my house. Actually, I said, remaining seated as the new owner of Strathmore Dynamics. I technically own 30% of this house as well. It's a company asset. This was a slight exaggeration. The house ownership was more complicated, but the effect was worth it. Father's expression crumbled from rage to shock as the full implications of what had happened began to sink in. I stood then, smoothing my dress. I have an early meeting tomorrow with the Strathmore executive team. As a courtesy, I wanted you to hear this news from me personally, rather than reading it in tomorrow's Wall Street Journal. James lunged forward, pointing an accusatory finger. This is revenge. You couldn't succeed on your own merits, so you're destroying what we built. What you're destroying, I corrected him. The company is on the verge of multiple lawsuits and potential bankruptcy due to your mismanagement. Horizon is saving it, not destroying it. As I turned to leave, Audrey spoke for the first time. Will you keep the employees? The genuine concern in her voice touched me. Yes. Our plan retains 95% of the workforce. The only immediate departures will be executives involved in the compliance fraud. Mother followed me to the door, her composure finally cracking. Kayla, please. This is your family. I paused, hand on the doorknob. Yes, it is. Which is why I'm saving the company instead of letting it collapse under its own corruption. Sometimes family means doing what's necessary, not what's comfortable. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed continuously with notifications about the acquisition. Industry news had already picked up the story. Our PR team was managing the announcement exactly as planned. Sitting in my car outside the Strathmore mansion, I allowed myself a moment to process what had just happened. The little girl who had never been good enough, who had been told repeatedly that her ideas had no value, now owned the family empire. Not through inheritance or connection, but through creating something better, something that aligned with my values. It wasn't about revenge, despite what James believed. It was about transformation, about taking something built on outdated principles and evolving it into something sustainable and ethical. In many ways, it was the ultimate fulfillment of the true Strathmore legacy, building something that would last. I started the car and drove away from the mansion, leaving behind the weight of disapproval I had carried for so long. Tomorrow would bring challenges as we began the integration process, but for the first time I was entering Strathmore Dynamics on my own terms. My first day as owner of Strathmore Dynamics began at 7 in the morning. I arrived at their Boston headquarters, a towering glass and steel structure with the Strathmore name emblazoned across the top. The security guard did a double take when I presented my ID, clearly having heard the news but struggling to reconcile it with the woman standing before him. "Miss Strathmore," he said uncertainly. "I wasn't informed you would be visiting today." "I'm not visiting," I replied with a smile. "I'm the new owner, and please call me Kayla." The executive floor was eerily quiet when I arrived. Most of senior management had received notifications of temporary administrative leave pending investigation of the compliance issues. I had installed an interim management team consisting of trusted Horizon executives and Strathmore directors who had supported the acquisition. My father's office, now mine, was exactly what you would expect: oversized, overstated, and designed to intimidate. Dark wood paneling, leather furniture, and hunting trophies created an atmosphere of old-world power. The massive desk positioned visitors at a deliberate disadvantage, forcing them to look up at whoever sat in the throne-like chair behind it. I didn't sit there. Instead, I moved to the conference table by the window and began setting up my laptop. The view overlooked Boston Harbor, a reminder of the city's history of both commerce and revolution. Appropriate considering what was happening within these walls. By 9, I had scheduled an all-employee meeting in the company auditorium. Over 800 employees filled the space, faces showing mixtures of concern, curiosity, and outright fear. Rumors about massive layoffs had already begun circulating. "Good morning." I began, standing on the stage without notes or teleprompter. "I'm Kayla Strathmore, founder and CEO of Horizon Innovations, and as of yesterday, owner of Strathmore Dynamics. Many of you have never met me, though. Some may know me as Richard Strathmore's daughter." A murmur ran through the crowd at this connection being made explicit. "Let me address your most immediate concern: your jobs are secure. This acquisition is not about cost-cutting or asset stripping. It's about transformation and growth." The tension in the room visibly decreased, though wariness remained. "Strathmore Dynamics has a proud manufacturing heritage," I continued. "What it has lacked is technological innovation and ethical leadership. Together, we will create a company that honors that heritage while building a sustainable future." For the next hour, I outlined my vision for the integrated company, took questions from concerned employees, and promised transparency throughout the transition process. By the end, I could sense a cautious optimism replacing the initial fear. As the auditorium emptied, I noticed a familiar figure waiting near the exit. Father had apparently used his still-active security credentials to enter the building. He looked smaller, somehow standing alone without his usual entourage of executives. We met in what had been his office, now stripped of personal items by my security team. "That was quite a performance," he said, gesturing toward the auditorium. "They seem to believe you actually care about this company." "I do care," I replied simply, "about the company, the employees, and the potential to do better." He scoffed. Better. You mean different. You've always wanted to tear down everything I built. I wanted to improve it. There's a difference. And now you think you've won. He paced the office, touching the furniture as if reassuring himself it was still real. This isn't about winning or losing, Father. It's about evolution. Strathmore Dynamics was failing because you and James refused to adapt. He stopped pacing and faced me directly. You have no idea what it takes to run a manufacturing empire. Your software solutions won't fix everything. You're right, I acknowledged, which is why I'm keeping most of the operational teams intact. I'm not here to dismantle manufacturing, but to enhance it with technology and ethical practices. Father seemed momentarily taken aback by my agreement. For perhaps the first time, he actually listened. As I outlined specific plans for integrating Horizon's technology with Strathmore's manufacturing expertise. As he prepared to leave, he paused at the door. Your grandfather would have hated this, you know. I smiled slightly. Actually, I think he would have adapted. True builders always do. Later that day, James arrived unannounced, demanding to see me. Unlike Father's controlled anger, James was openly hostile. I want a position in the new structure, he stated without preamble. Executive Vice President at minimum. I studied my brother, noting the entitlement that had been nurtured his entire life. James, you're currently under investigation for knowingly falsifying compliance reports. Executive leadership isn't an option. His face flushed. Those reports were Father's responsibility. I just implemented his directives. And that's exactly the problem, I replied. Leadership means taking responsibility, not deflecting it. After James stormed out promising legal action that would never materialize due to his own liability, I received a surprising visitor. Mother arrived with a small box tucked under her arm. I brought you something, she said, setting the box on the conference table. I thought you might want it for your new office. Inside was a framed photograph I had never seen my grandfather Theodore, at the opening of the first Strathmore factory, looking young and determined. Your grandfather was an innovator in his time, Mother said quietly. Everyone forgets that now. They only remember the tradition, not the disruption he caused initially. I looked at her with new understanding. You never said anything when Father and James dismissed my ideas. She sighed suddenly, looking older. That was my failure. I chose comfort over courage for too long. She straightened, smoothing her always perfect hair. I'm proud of what you've built, Kayla. I should have said that years ago. Over the next 6 months, the integration of Horizon and Strathmore proceeded more smoothly than anticipated. We maintained the Strathmore name for the manufacturing division while implementing Horizon's technology and sustainability practices throughout the operation. The compliance issues were addressed openly and honestly. We paid fines where necessary, implemented remediation plans for environmental damage, and established new transparency standards that exceeded regulatory requirements. It was expensive and occasionally painful, but it preserved the company's reputation and laid the groundwork for ethical operation moving forward. Most surprisingly, many longtime Strathmore employees embraced the changes enthusiastically. We knew things weren't right. One factory supervisor told me during a site visit. But questioning management wasn't part of the culture here. It's refreshing to be able to raise concerns without fear. My relationship with my family members took different paths following the acquisition. Father retreated to a vacation home in Maine, refusing most contact while he adjusted to his new reality. James attempted to launch a competing venture that quickly failed due to his tarnished reputation in the industry. Audrey, however, surprised everyone by asking to join the company's charitable foundation. I've spent my life meeting social expectations, she explained. I'd like to use those connections for something meaningful now. My personal healing journey took longer than the business integration. Years of rejection and dismissal had left wounds that success alone couldn't heal. I worked with a therapist to process my complicated family dynamics and learn to value myself beyond achievement or approval. 1 year after the acquisition, we held a company-wide celebration marking the successful integration. Strathmore Horizon, as the combined entity was now known, had increased revenue by 23% while reducing environmental impact by 40%. Employee satisfaction scores had reached all-time highs. During my address to the assembled employees, I shared the lesson that had guided me through the journey. True success isn't measured by what you acquire or achieve, it's measured by the integrity with which you build. For years, I sought approval from people who couldn't see the value in my vision. I learned that breaking toxic cycles sometimes requires difficult choices and unwavering commitment to your values. Each of you has the power to create your own path to define success on your own terms. The freedom comes not from proving others wrong, but from being true to your own vision of what's possible. As I concluded my speech, I noticed Audrey in the audience genuinely applauding. Mother stood beside her, a small smile on her face. They represented something I hadn't expected to find through this business journey, the possibility of new relationships built on respect rather than obligation. The company continues to evolve and grow. We've expanded internationally, bringing sustainable practices to manufacturing facilities across 3 continents. Our technology division continues to innovate, creating solutions that make ethical business practices more accessible and profitable. I still work remotely, sometimes a habit from my startup days that I've never abandoned. The difference is that now, no one questions my commitment or success when I choose flexibility over tradition. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between approval and authenticity, between following expected paths or creating your own? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need encouragement to follow their own vision. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, building with integrity always creates something more valuable than building for approval.